What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest, just a sweetheart of an individual. Her name is Anne Alexander-Sieder. I had a great conversation with her, and it was awesome because this was one of the first people who actually approached me out of my wheelhouse as far as entertainment goes. One of the first people to ever approach me about doing an episode together, which I was more than happy to agree to because I want to do as many different fields as possible. And talking to somebody who was active in the active world over in the Germany area and the UK area, that's obviously something I would absolutely love to talk about as somebody who is a huge buff of movies and entertainment myself. So it was a real pleasure to talk to her, and I think everybody's really going to enjoy this. Just a real sweetheart of an individual, like I said. And also, if you're driving right now and you're a little bit tired, you might want to wait till later to watch this because she has one of the most soothing voices that I've ever heard in my life. It's funny. I actually started nodding off at one point in time, not because I was uninterested in what she was saying. I was being tired, but I was being drawn in by how soothing her voice was. And at one point I had to go, whoa, wake up, dude. It felt like my mom was reading me a bedtime story. So it's just a real fun interview, and I'm really looking forward to presenting this to you here today. But not much to babble about today, other than the fact that I hope everybody had a great Christmas if you celebrated, and a very happy New Year. I know me and my wife have had a great last month with the small break that I took going to Kings Island to Winterfest and doing all that stuff seasonally. I hope everybody else, just had a real great relaxing season with no extra BS and just pure enjoyment, and ready to take on 2025 because it's here. It is here in our faces. I don't even know where the hell 2024 went, but 2025 is here and in full effect. So hopefully you got all the rest you needed to kick the new year off right. But speaking of kicking things off right, one of the easiest ways you can do that is to go to my Patreon at www.patreon.com/theroseshowpod. Join there for free. All guests are announced early. We're going to be trying to do some special things, special giveaways, stuff like that over on the Patreon as this year kicks off. I was hoping to have a lot more prepared for when season 2 started, but like we said last, a couple weeks ago episode with Pat Godwin, life came at me fast, and I had to start this show a lot faster than I wanted. So I'm going to be trying to think of some different ways to make the Patreon feel more special for everybody who has joined. And again, it's the easiest way to keep up with the show. You don't have to deal with social media algorithms, so why wouldn't you? Go join right now. It's absolutely free, and it helps your boy out. And wherever you're watching or listening to this on, please like and subscribe because that also helps the show grow, and I can't do it without you guys. Literally, I cannot do it without you guys. So when you do that, you absolutely help me out in more ways than you could possibly imagine. Anyway, enough from me. Let's go ahead and hear a word from our sponsors and then my interview with Anne Alexander-Sieder. Here we go, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here for W Energy, my sponsors. Now, what is W Energy, you might ask? W Energy is clean, jitterless energy. Better than the canned stuff that you would get at your convenience stores, your gas stations, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have all that trash in it. Now, how do I know? Because I myself use W Energy. So what I've got here, a couple of limited edition flavors. For instance, W Energy puts out this stuff called Grandpa's Ginger Water. I know it don't sound that great, but it is amazing. A limited run that they came out that I've got actually multiple tubs of. I believe in W Energy. I use W Energy myself. Also, this was just released, and it's another limited edition flavor that they come out with, and it's called Palm Blom. It's pomegranate blossom. Real nice, clean flavor. And a lot of W Energy, whether it be classics like Calio Cream or the Dub Sludge, whatever it might be, it is clean energy. It's not going to make you feel all crappy at the end of the day after using it. Now, here's what I want you to do, because again, they're obviously a sponsor of mine. But what I want you to do is I want you to go to www.w.gg, order one of the sampler packs, which you get one of these cool tumblers, a part of the sampler pack. And I want you to grab one, but don't use my promo code. That's right. Don't use my promo code who else at checkout, because I want you to try it without thinking I'm just trying to sell you a bill of goods. Try it one time, and then when you go back to buy your second order of W Energy, then use my promo code who else at checkout for a 10% discount, because all you're gonna do is try it. I know you're gonna love it. That's how much I believe in this product, and I thank them for sponsoring the show today. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today I have got a guest who has a pretty interesting story. Not only do we have a dog of the same name of Zoe, which is why I respect her right off the rip because she picked the perfect name for her pet. Um,
Absolutely. Is there a better name for a dog? We're gonna get comments.
Yeah, sure. That's okay. I'm used to it by now. But she's got an interesting story because and it touches me in a certain level of my soul because I always tell people, especially these days, like people look at we don't live in an age where you're 50 and in a wheelchair anymore. We live in an age where people are 100, 120 and they're still active and they're still doing things. So why people put labels on others? You're too old to do this. You shouldn't be going after a dream. It's not achievable for you. This person who's my guest today, she has broken all those molds. And again, that's something that I also look towards because I'm 38 years old and I didn't think starting a new project of my own, it was too late. Nobody's going to care. I'm almost 40. Who gives a damn? And then I'm looking at her story and I'm like, man, that's a ridiculous thing. So the fact that she hit me up and she wanted to talk to me on my show is something that's special to me. And I'm so excited to get her story and hopefully it's something that uplift other people who think that, maybe age will hold them back in some sort or fashion. And it won't, because as long as you have a dream and you go for it, man, you can do anything, and she's living proof. It is Anne Alexander-Sieder. How are we
You
doing today, my
said
friend?
it right. Thank you, Jay. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on your show, The Row Show.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I'm very excited to talk to you because I always do a little bit of research as much as possible on my
Well, you
guests, but
found out my dog's name.
I found out your
That's
dog's name. Exactly. So that's proof right there that
yeah.
I do my research on my people, but I didn't do too much because I started listening to some podcast features you were on, and I was like, okay, she's got a good story. I don't want to hear too much about it. So I'm going into this a little bit blind, but I still think we're gonna have a good conversation. But let's go ahead and start at the very beginning and get kind of your backstory because I find it pretty interesting.
Okay. Well, I was a professional actor back in America, where I'm from, as you may be able to notice from my accent, but I now live in Germany. I've been here for 30 years, and I just got my German citizenship
Oh,
October 17th. So I'm now American German. But as a professional actor back in the States, I was doing pretty well. I didn't have to bartend anymore, or wait tables anymore, or temp, doing all those things that we actors do to kind of pay the rent. In fact, I was doing well enough to have SAG pay my health insurance, which is Screen Actors Guild. So it's one of the actors' unions. And I was working on my equity card. And long story short, because I can make this very long, but I will shorten this down to a little pistachio sized nutshell. I met this hot German guy when I was in Europe, and that was 30 years ago, and I am still here. But when I first moved here, I very quickly, got pregnant and all of that jazz. I just honestly didn't see a way how I was going to make my acting career work here. I didn't speak German, and communication is kind of integral to being an actor.
sure.
So the first couple of years, I was getting antsy. Our son was getting, going into kindergarten or whatever it is, the preschool there. And so I had some time, and I noticed I had seen a poster somewhere that the American Drama Group was in Munich. So I was like, aha, that's me. I'm going to go check that out. So I made an appointment. I auditioned. I had a great conversation with the owner, and he invited me to join the company. And I was thrilled until he pulled out the calendar and started showing me the touring schedule. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, wow. I'm so sorry to have wasted your time. I was mortified. And I just felt horrible. But I was like, I have a baby at home. There's no way I can tour. And so as I got up to leave, I'm just closing the door behind me. And kind of on a whim, I leaned back in and I said, hey, Grantley, you don't happen to know anybody else who could help me here in Munich, do you? And he thought about it for a second and he gave me two names. And those two names really kicked off my voiceover career in Germany. And I had a great one. I mean, there are first of all, there are huge German brands, that want to and do compete on the world market. And luckily for us, for Americans, right, the English is the bridge language, and the American accent is kind of the accent of choice for
Sure.
these.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to stay that way, but that's what it was, back then. And so I started doing voiceover work, and it just kind of snowballed until sometimes I had 4 or 5 different voiceover jobs in a day. So it
Wow.
really snowballed into a really lucrative, fun job. But it wasn't acting. It wasn't like what I signed up for. It wasn't what I went to drama school for. That led to me being a presenter, so doing kind of like the intros and outros for corporate TV. So I did Audi TV for 7 years. I did Allianz TV. I interviewed, the like the top people in big companies like Siemens or BMW, Audi. I mean, you kind of name it, I've done it, right? As far as those things go, I did a quiz show that was piped out from a German company to Canada. So I was that was basically a monologue for 2 hours live.
Yeah. Right.
you know, I have stories to tell on that one. And it was a lot of fun. But none of that was as lucrative as it was, as fun as it was, because I was always working with creative people and fun people, right? It's not a corporate job. It's not a 9 to 5 type thing. And half the time I'd be done at, like a 6 hour day was a mega long day for me. So
Yeah.
I would, and I could always arrange my schedule so I could go pick up my son and grab my dog. And that's how I used to show up to these gigs, with my dog and my son in tow. There's your coloring book, honey. You sit on the floor and be quiet. My dog knew not to move. I had a Jack Russell, and I had trained her literally not. She would lay there so stiff that she wouldn't even relax her legs and put them down on the ground. She would just be like, you know.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. And it wasn't until my son was about 16 years old that he came to me, and we had a standing movie date on Friday nights. And he came to me and he said, "Mom, is it okay if I don't hang out with you tomorrow and I hang out with my friends instead? And actually, never again. I only want to hang out with my friends on Friday night from now on." And, let me remove the dagger from my heart. But of course, we raise our kids to be independent human beings. So I did my job, right? But it was really the first time I had a chance to think about, well, what do I want to do? Because my whole life had been, even though I was working, we still had a very traditional relationship. I was the one taking care of our son. I was the one responsible for him. I was the one cooking. I was the one taking care of the house. Um, I was doing all that, right? So I just all of a sudden my son doesn't want to hang out with me on the weekend. My husband, I think, was going away on a golfing trip. So it was like, what do I even want to do? And it was a question I hadn't even asked myself. And this is something that I find that so many people, I'm 58 now, I was 47 at the time. The kids kind of grow up, and it's generally the women, though not always. I don't want to be sexist, right? So, but it is often the woman who just those maternal instincts kick in, and
Mhm.
and she's like, I want to be home. I want to be around for my child, and I did. I never resented a single second of it. But you think, "I'll get to it. I'll get back to it. I'll get back to my dreams. I'll get back to my passion," whatever that is. And then you get there and you go, "Oh, it's done. Nobody cares about a 47-year-old woman as an actor anymore." And of
Right.
course I
Yeah.
had those limiting beliefs. I did,
Yeah.
But back to the story, what I did was when I asked myself, what do I want to do? The answer turned out I wanted to see if there was a workshop, an acting workshop. So I sat down and I Googled acting workshop Munich English, and one popped up. There was an acting coach out of LA. His name was Kirk Baltz. He's the one who had his ear cut off in Reservoir Dogs.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah, he's a great coach. And he was doing a workshop in Munich starting the next day. There was one spot open. So I whipped out my credit card. I saved my spot. I went into the workshop. It was amazing. It was like exactly what I was hoping it would be. And I left that workshop 3 days later feeling like I had been trying to breathe underwater for 16 years. And I
Yeah.
had finally, like, this is my element. These are my people. This is what I want to do. And I came home and I told my husband, I don't know how. I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I need to see if I just need to give it another chance. And that led me down the next road, which was for me because even though I had been working acting adjacent, I hadn't been working acting, right? I hadn't been like getting into those roles and all that. And so I was rusty and I needed the training that I got, like from, for example, from that workshop. So I had a couple of choices. Well, I guess I had three choices. I could forget about it, which was not in the cards. I could fly to LA, fly to New York, fly to London, get the training I needed. But that was obviously going to be really expensive because you have to add on to the cost of the workshop, your flight, your hotel, food, whatever, transportation, all those kind of things. So that would have cut it down to once or twice a year. Plus, I would have been gone, right? So, and I'm still like a mom. My son is a teenager, but I'm still getting him up for school and making his breakfast and making his dinner and, still doing all those things. And then the last option was, well, I could figure out how to get those people that I want to coach with to me here in Munich and do it around my schedule. And that's what I did. And I started reaching out to coaches that I wanted to work with and bringing them into Munich. And for me, my original intention was just to be able to take these workshops and not pay more than I would have taken had they already been in Munich. So a few €100, €500, something like that, depending on what the workshop was. What ended up happening, which I didn't even, figure into this whole equation, was I ended up taking the workshops for free. I ended up building a community, which it was hugely helpful because of course, I knew a lot of voiceover actors, what they call speakers here, and they
Mm.
definitely shoebox you. So whenever I would, do a good job on a cartoon or, doing a radio play, they would, "Wow, you're really good." I was like, "I'm an actor." I would always, "I'm an actor." I would get kind of insulted, like, "Of
Yeah.
course I'm doing this well. This is what I
Almost
trained."
almost like they're surprised you can do the job. Like it goes hand in hand, right?
Totally, but they never saw
Yeah.
it that way. They see it
Right.
speakers, actors, presenters, right, all very different, when they're actually just, fruit of the same tree,
Sure.
and, um, so that's what I started doing. I started bringing in coaches. I was bringing in 1 to 2 a month, and then I was organizing workshops in between so that we could work on what we were learning, and I as I say, I very quickly realized not only was I getting this training for free, I was building this great community, I was expanding my network, I was building authority without even meaning to, because I was a person who was becoming like a go-to for really great workshops.
Mm.
And I was earning money, which I didn't even figure into it, but I was easily earning 1,000, 2,000 per workshop. And that was, I mean, it was like a nice to have, but it wasn't my main goal. So I did that for about a year and a half, and until I felt like my training kind of clicked back into place. And then I relaunched my acting career, and I went out and I started looking for an agent. I started getting on the casting director's radars. Doing all the things that we had kind of been taught to do in acting school. and then you wait. And that's kind of what it's still how people are taught today, like you get all this structure and training when you're in school. And I think this goes beyond just acting school to many different jobs. And then you're like, okay, kid, you're done. Get out there in the world and see what you can do.
Yeah.
And when I was a young woman, that worked to a certain extent. People open doors for you when you're young and, you know, uh, eager and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I also had luck. I had a boyfriend who was a really well-known musician at the time, so he opened a lot of doors to me. And though you cannot, that's not something you can recreate. So at this point, I'm about 50, 49, 50, somewhere in there. And I'm realizing that if I continue down this road of waiting for things to happen, I'm going to be waiting a very long time. And that's when I kind of was looking back over my career as a young woman and realizing, okay, well, those things are not, I can't recreate the luck that I had or those situations. So how do I create my own luck? How do I create my own thing? And what I realized what was missing for me was understanding the business of being an actor. And that's when I really went about trying to understand that. First, busting my own limiting beliefs. It started kind of with that. So I had limiting beliefs around my age. At this point now I'm in my early 50s. So I had limiting beliefs around that. Around my lack of perfect German. My German's really good, but you can still hear an accent. So I kept thinking, oh, if only I were younger. Oh, if only I spoke German perfectly. But honestly, there's no point in wasting time if onlying, because it's not going to happen. I'm not going to get
Sure.
younger and I'm not going to, right? So deal with what you have, play with the cards in your deck. And when I embraced that, then I realized that there was a problem with my branding. So especially when you are the product, as an actor is, right? Or a podcaster, you are the product.
Yeah.
You need to understand you have a brand. Everybody has a brand, whether they know
Hmm.
it or not. You have a brand. And the more you understand your brand, the more you can influence how it's being perceived, as long
Yeah.
as you're not delusional. Let me put
Yeah.
that little caveat in, right?
Which
Yeah.
is a big problem for podcasters.
Y-
I have
y-
noticed that
and
absolutely. There's a lot,
actors too.
and yeah, and actors too as well. Yes, absolutely. There seems to be a disconnect between self-awareness and entertainers in general. I've
Yeah.
noticed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother podcast, Jay. We could talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
And so you know, as an actor, your initial branding comes from your what I like to call your energetic signature, and of course your typecast, right? I have strong features, I have kind of sharp features. I play I'm dressed in a sweatshirt right now, but it's probably still coming across. I play high status women
Yeah.
with moral ambiguity and a big, fierce heart. And in the beginning, all they were seeing was high status, power, and moral ambiguity.
Yeah.
And they were missing the big, fierce heart, which if you talk to me just for a couple of minutes, you see it, right? So
Yeah.
I realize this is my fault. It's how I am branding myself. It's my headshots. It's my show reel. So I really dove into that, started working with coaches for branding, marketing, networking, all of it, right? And the more I learned, the more I started to change my package to reflect who I really am, because these days, acting, people always are like, oh, you're an actor, you must be a great liar. Acting for me, and I think any good actor, is about telling the truth. It's not about lying. So it's about finding that grain of authenticity, finding that grain of relatability, that grain of whatever it happens to be. I always say we're like faceted diamonds. And the facets up on the crown of the diamond, that's this. That's everything you're seeing right now. What you're not seeing are all the facets that make up my complexity and your complexity as a human being. Everyone's, right? We all have this. And each one of those facets kind of represents a life we could have lived or a life that we can identify with. And my job as an actor is to find it, even if it's down at the very bottom, at the point of the diamond, to find that tiny little facet and shine it up and let the light hit it so that I can play that character authentically. But if it ain't in me, you're going to know it.
Yeah.
If I can't find that grain of authenticity, you're going to see it. And audiences are so savvy today that they pick up on it right away. So as an actor, right, so I always need other actors to help me audition just like they do, right? So you always need someone to read with you. And my actor friends started to notice that I was getting much better auditions and then starting to book much better roles. And so naturally they're like, hey, what's going on? How'd you get that? What happened? What are you doing? What's different? And then I started coaching one-on-one, but that very quickly led to my signature program, which is Get Better Roles, which is where I help trained actors who've been in the business for at least a couple of years to get the kinds of opportunities that they're ready for and that they deserve by showing the industry what they're capable of, where they're capable of going, and not just where they've been. So that's kind of one thing. So then back to the workshop aspect of it. So I told you about the first part of it was just getting that training so that I felt like a professional actor again, which I did and I was happy with. Then throughout the years, whenever I would want to make a short film or we needed some extra money to go on vacation or whatever it was, I would put together a workshop or two to have enough money to fund the film or to add to the vacation pot, whatever it was. And so then my goal was making money, or like literally just let me make some extra money for this thing. And then later, and I still do use it for that occasionally, I have to be very honest. And then later, I would say the last 2-3 years specifically, I've been using it as a networking tool. So there's a casting director I want to get to know me as a human being and not as this lowly actor and her or him, it's usually a her, this big casting director. And this is a way to get us both on even ground. I am offering something of value to them, money, right? And so we're able to have conversations and to talk and to get to know each other as a human being with one person offering something to someone else. And if I want to participate in that workshop, then I can also show them my skill as an actor. And that has been incredible. I mean, from that, I've been able to get direct results and all of that. Direct requests for auditions, as opposed to, or even direct requests to bookings, as opposed to, just being thrown into the vat of thousands of actors that are applying for one role, which is what it looks like these days. And so it really, that journey of bridging the gap between my passion and making it my profession came up again and again in conversations. As I said, I'm 58, so I have a lot of girlfriends and friends who are older and who are not happy with the way they spend the majority of their life, which is their work. And no matter what it is that someone does that doesn't require a higher degree, so if your passion is, well, I just got off a call with someone, her passion is cooking and specifically comfort food cooking. So, and this is something that we got to through a long conversation. And so my mind just immediately starts sparking ideas and ways that she could turn that into an event and things like that. And so it's just kind of how I work. I think I'm one of those people that, like, you tell me you have a problem, I'm going to be looking for a solution for it. And if that's not what you want, then it's don't tell me because it's how I work, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so every time I would have one of these conversations with someone, it was like, "Oh, well, you could do this, and you could. Oh, you're so great at fashion. You're so great at putting yourself together, and you've got such a great style." And thinking of one girlfriend in particular, she's 61, she's gorgeous, she has amazing fashion style, and there are so many women like me, right? Who also want to be able to get dressed up and not like feel like, well, obviously I don't feel like I have to dress my age, but a lot of women this age do,
Yeah.
right? You feel like I've gotten to this point in my life, need to cut my hair off and perm it or whatever it is, and I can no longer wear a sweatshirt. I can whatever it is, right? So there are all these self-imposed limitations that we put on ourselves, and it in these conversations, what I realized again and again was I would always refer back to because this is exactly how I launched my acting career. I would say, you do this, you can get an expert to, and you can learn alongside everybody else. You can create events around something that lights you up, and be partake in it just like everyone else. Because frankly, not everybody is a coach or an expert, or even wants to be a coach
Yeah.
or an expert.
Yeah.
And even if you're like, here's the other thing, right? Because I ended up taking a lot of business coaching courses as well, like Sunny Lenarduzzi, James Wedmore, Amy Porterfield, those kind of people. And what I always see in these communities are people who are just dealing with tons of imposter syndrome. It gets posted in these groups, like literally on the daily. And they're just like, and then you'll see like, 90 people will respond to it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, me too, me too. And what I find is these coaching programs are fantastic if you are an expert. But a lot of times people fall into them because they kind of fall for the just stay 2 steps ahead of whoever you're teaching and you'll be fine. And if you're only 2 steps ahead of someone, you're always kind of running to stay ahead of them. It's not difficult for someone to take 2 steps and catch up to you. And then that's what they're feeling, that imposter thing.
Yeah.
And that really also made me realize that this method is a perfect way for them to bridge that gap and be getting the skills they need to feel like an expert while they're building their community, while they're building their authority, and while they're earning at least a partial income. I don't know, depending on what their niche is, and there are so many factors in it, but you can certainly earn several thousand euros a month without a whole lot of effort doing this kind of thing. So that's kind of like my very long-winded story. I appreciate you being so patient.
No, hey, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. And not only that, you made a lot of good points through all that. Especially, there was one thing that I think what draws me to your story so much is the overcoming your own limitations aspect that you
Yeah,
focus heavy on. So when I started podcasting, I had to deal with a lot of I don't take rejection well. And I know that's not like something that is singular to me. A lot of people don't take rejection well.
I've got some
But
advice on that one, which I'd be happy to give
sure.
you, because as an
Yeah,
actor, I deal
well,
with a lot of rejection.
yeah, right, exactly. And when I decided to start doing this podcast, I knew I was going to have to face that. And because it's for me, it's more ego than anything. It's like, why doesn't this person want to talk to me? Of course they don't. The amount of people that get podcast requests is insane, So I've got to. It wasn't necessarily. I had to train my mind to think of it differently. Not a rejection isn't a no. It's a not right now. That was the outlook that I had to start training
That's a
myself
great
to think.
outlook.
And my background, I came from a background of music, so it was kind of one of those things where I never really had to deal with that a whole lot. The worst I ever had to deal with was, hey, can my band get on this show? And somebody saying no, which didn't happen often. But even then, it was kind of like I took it almost as a personal jab, but at the same time, it's not. We made our own destiny when we were doing a lot of the stuff we were doing while we were active, and then COVID ended up taking out the band, and
Mm.
we couldn't continue after COVID hit, and I spent about 2 years or so really just kind of refreshing my brain, because being in we went on multiple tours. So basically, let me go ahead and start at the beginning on that. We were really heavy in the scene that we were in. We were touring a lot. We were doing tons of shows, and all that stopped. So I took time to kind of just take a break from trying to do entertainment. And people had always told me my entire life, like, you should do radio. And I'm like, I have no interest in radio. But after being in a band, I didn't want to just do music by myself when I was ready to start a new project. And I've done podcasts before in the past, but nothing that ever stuck like past 5 episodes. I'd always get bored. So I knew if I was
Mm.
going to do a podcast, I would have to do something that I was going to dedicate myself to, and B, accept rejection, because it's a
Mhm.
part of the game. It's absolutely a part of the podcasting game. But my point of bringing it up was it helped me realize, like, a no isn't a death sentence. It just means you got to try harder. And this has led me to overcoming that fear of somebody. What if they say no? Well, if they say no, they say no. Overcoming that has led me to talk to some of the most interesting people that I've found to date. Running into complete strangers like you in random groups, and having conversations like this. But not only complete strangers, it has led me to, as of this recording, 3 days ago, I was a guest on a national syndicated radio show called The Bob and Tom Show. Now, as of this recording, that was a couple months ago. But I was on because I had won a contest, but training my mind to not have that fear of rejection actually got me onto this radio show, and I was able to show the world what I was willing to do. I knew when I was waiting on the phone, waiting to be on this radio show, I was going to blow these people away. I was going to do everything I could. I'm going to put 100% of myself into this feature that what they think is they're just talking to a contest winner. No, I'm going to show them what I could do. Now, granted, it helped. I was a lifelong fan of the show. I don't know if I said it. It was called the Bob and Tom Show. It's a nationally syndicated radio show here in the States. It's been on literally my entire life. It's super heavy in the Midwest, not so much on the West Coast, but it's
Mm.
something that I've always listened to. And these guys are radio legends, and so that I had the opportunity to do that, and I was going to show them what I could do. I don't think, had I had my mental training, like I said, doing this podcast, I don't think I would have been able to do that the way that I did. And it went very well. Like, they even made multiple jokes like, hey, we should hire this guy. One
Right.
of the radio hosts named Chick McGee said, how often is it that the caller is more funny than we are? I got a lot of, and I was at
Right.
work at my day job while this was happening. And I got off the phone, and so many people were like, man, that couldn't have gone better. And like, even talking about it right now, I'm still feeling a little high from it, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have happened that way had I not decided I'm not going to let the fear of rejection. What if these people didn't like me? That was my first thought when I got on this radio call. What if they don't like me? What if I'm not entertaining?
Yeah.
Fuck all that,
Yeah.
because that is going to limit yourself. And as corny as it sounds, this is really what happened. Like, I'm sitting in my car waiting for this phone call, and I'm like reciting the lyrics to Eminem's "Lose Yourself." Like, you got one shot to do this, bro.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
this is your moment. This is not coming again. You have waited 20 years for this
Yeah.
10-minute segment that's coming up. You better give it everything, because it's not coming back around. And if you
Yeah.
don't knock this out the park, if you don't, and it has done wonders for me since being, and just in the 3 days, like, my follower count has skyrocketed. I mean, it's just, and it all is because I made the decision not to be afraid. And I like I said, I tried going through some of your episodes on your podcast, and of one episode in particular that I've already started using some of your advice on. It was
Thank
episode
you.
70s. Hey, you've got some great content on there, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't mean it. But episode 76, there was something that on your show that I've already started using, and that is, does this serve me? So
Mm.
I've already started to reshape my mind of,
The
Does
catch,
this
cancel,
attitude?
correct, right? On the limiting
Yes,
beliefs.
exactly.
Yes, yeah,
Exactly. That was it.
absolutely,
Yes.
yeah. Should we
Yeah.
tell your audience? I don't know, we kinda teased them with it, now I think we have to tell them.
Yeah. Hey, go ahead.
Well, one of the things, one of the ways to get over your limiting beliefs is you first have to become aware that you even have it. For example,
Yes.
a belief is just that. Like, I'm sure you all believe that the sky is blue, but is it? I mean, for me, the
Right.
sky is not blue right now. And what about at a sunset, right? When it's red and pink and purple and yellow and orange, or when there's a tornado and it's green, or when there's a storm and it's steel or charcoal. The sky is not always blue, and that's the same
Yeah.
with our beliefs. They can be challenged. But before you can challenge them, you must first catch them. This is the 3 C's of getting rid of those, busting those limiting beliefs. So you got to catch it. And what I really suggest is you just get a journal and start becoming aware of the thoughts, even something like when you say, "Oh, I forgot my keys." Stupid, right? And you run back in the house to get your keys. We have so many negative thoughts that we just casually throw at ourselves,
Yes.
and we don't even take them into account. Start writing those down. The next thing you wanna do is cancel them. So that's what Jay was referring to. For me, I always ask myself, or I will say to myself, "That does not serve me."
Yeah.
So if that works for you, I'm glad it worked for you, Jay. And if that works for you, listeners, watchers, use it. If not, find something else. No, thank you. Not today, whatever it may be. And then lastly, catch, cancel, correct. You want to correct that limiting belief. So even if it is something as mundane as I forgot my keys, stupid, right? No, I'm not stupid. I'm human. I'm busy. I have a lot of things on my mind. I made a mistake,
Yeah.
easily correctable, and go in and do that and give yourself that grace. So, anyway, sidetrack back to and now back to your regularly scheduled
No,
podcast.
yeah. But I mean, that's the key point to all that is though, and this is something that I had to learn as well. If you don't do the work, a lot of people say, I'm going to do the work. And this goes to anything, even if it's just changing your mental. If you are not willing to step back and do the work, none of it's ever going to happen.
Yeah,
So you can give me all the advice in the world. If I don't take it to heart and actually work on it, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
So that's another thing we were talking about, and I don't want to insult anybody. That's not my intention here. But there's so many people, especially in this game, who again are not aware to the point where they cannot step back and challenge themselves and go, "Am I right on this?" Because
Yeah,
I can sit here and say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to look at it and see if it doesn't serve me." But if I don't have the critical mindset of going, "Well, is this my problem or am I making it a problem?" It doesn't
yeah,
matter. And that's something else that I've had to retrain my brain and try to refocus on, is it me? Is it me that's doing this? Am I being the one who's over negative, or is this an actual negative thing happening to me? And
yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I like listening to your podcast. And even though you're obviously aiming at actors, but at the same time I'm looking at it going, okay, I can take these lessons and still apply it to myself. And I think
Actors
that
are
you do.
people too,
Yeah,
honestly,
right.
right? Actors are
Yeah,
people
right.
too. And so the advice does apply because we're all
Yeah,
people dealing with the same limiting beliefs. And
yeah.
to kind of what you were saying, I believe in radical accountability, radical honesty. This is what I
Yes.
really kind of demand of my clients because they're not going to until they can recognize and take accountability for where they are in their career, they're not gonna get any further. So, just
Right.
as an example, right, so many actors are like, "Oh, my agent, they suck. I haven't had an audition in 6 months," whatever it is. Maybe your agent sucks, but what have you been doing to get an audition?
Right.
Because as soon as you're giving you're blaming someone else, you have also given that circumstance or person your power. You know?
Yeah.
And what I always say to them is like, look, an agent, they have a lot of horses in a lot of different races. You have one horse in one race. That's it.
Yeah.
So you better do all you can to make sure that your horse gets to where you want it to go
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stop waiting for someone to get your horse there for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know?
I have a lot of podcaster friends as well. And they have looked at my roster. Because I've had some pretty big names, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but like the world of professional wrestling, I had on Ken Shamrock. I've had on just recently. I've had on one of the most successful tag teams of all time, Demolition. I've had on a bunch of comedians. I've had on actors such as yourself. Tom Arnold has been on this show,
Oh,
and
wow.
people,
I love him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was a lot of fun,
I
but
bet.
people ask me like, man, how do you keep landing these? How do you keep landing these people? I asked them.
Do you
Like,
know
it
who my
really
very first podcast guest was?
who was
Y
that?
I had reached out to a ton of casting directors, and my very first and everyone turned me down. I didn't have a
Mhm.
podcast at the time, right? And everyone was like, "No, no, My very first podcast guest was Tussa Lande, who was the casting director for the Millennium Trilogy, Skyfall, and Scepter, and Califat.
Oh, wow. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, major big time.
Yeah,
And then when I would reach out to other people, I would say, "Well, Tussalanda has been on my on my podcast, right? And I would love to have you on too." And
yeah,
so it's yeah, it's a way to
yeah.
sort of get your
Right.
credibility. But you only need that one person kinda to parlay that, right?
Exactly, right. But at the same point, if you never ask,
Yes.
the answer's always no.
Yes! Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
that's a part of what I was talking about of overcoming the fear that I had because it's always, well, what if they say no? Who gives a shit? They said no. Try again
yeah,
before, or try again
absolutely.
later.
Yeah,
You're never gonna figure it out unless if you take those steps. And again, if you keep bugging these people, like case in point, there's a guy who ran a wrestling company in the '90s called Eric Bischoff is his name, and Eric was the only person to ever almost put WWE out of business. And I am a big fan of his. I always have been. I look at him as a personal hero, and people keep asking me, like, how did you get him? I didn't give up. He ignored me multiple times. And I got it in my head. I'm going to keep bugging him until he's flat out tells me no or he does it. And even if he says no, I'm going to keep bugging him until he gets on. And that's exactly
yeah,
how I got him. I got 30
yeah,
minutes of his time free of charge because I kept getting at him. And
yeah.
you can't take that kind of stuff personal. So,
No, and you
that,
know
yeah,
what? I think most people, especially like in these kind of industries, podcasting, wrestling, acting, right? Where it takes grit and tenacity, they
yes,
appreciate that,
yes,
you
right,
know?
right. Yeah, yeah,
So this is the other thing I think, when people are scared to I mean, honestly, what it boils down to is they're scared to step out of their comfort zone,
yes.
right? So they just have to remember that their dreams, those big dreams, they're not in their comfort zone. Because
Right.
if they were, they wouldn't need to look any further. They wouldn't
Yes.
have those dreams. They would be living their dream.
Right.
And just taking those first couple of steps, that automatically has stretched that comfort zone by just a couple of steps. So
Yeah.
if you just even take tiny steps, small steps every day, doing those things that make you a little bit uncomfortable, what scared you yesterday is going to be behind you. And sure, there will be new things, but you will have gained the trust and the confidence in yourself that you are capable of doing the scary stuff, and you live if it doesn't turn out exactly like you hoped.
Yeah. There's a saying that I don't know where it came from, but I saw it once and it's always stuck with me. And I haven't started applying it until this last year. But the saying is everything you've always wanted is on the other side of fear. And
Yeah,
that's something that has always been engraved in my brain. And I'm telling you right now, and I'm not a millionaire podcaster, but I've done a lot of cool stuff in a very short period of time because I made the decision that I was not going to let fear hold me back. Now I've always been comfortable in environments like this. Like I can't talk to you if you found me at Walmart. I'm the most awkward individual you probably ever met in your life. But in situations like this, I've always been okay with opening up because I'm in my own room right here and I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
But I can be in front of a crowd of 500 people and be fine. Like that doesn't bother me at all. So I've always been okay in a conversation environment such as this, or like I said, in a live show. But it's always been the little things like being told no that has always scared me to death,
Mm.
or
But
like
you
like
and
talk.
everybody else, Jay, nobody likes to be
Yeah,
told no. You know,
sure,
that's
sure.
just human nature. One of the things I do in one of my master classes is I will ask the actors, right? What do you think has been holding you back? What has been missing, right? What is the one thing, right? And what has been keeping you? Because there are only two skills an actor needs to have. They need to be able to act and they need to be able to pitch themselves, right? So what has been keeping you from pitching yourself? And there's always that sort of awkward silence that nobody wants to be the first to admit to something. And I remind them of the radical honesty, radical accountability. And then slowly people start to, fill in chat in the chat, right? And then I do the next slide, and the next slide lists basically all of their fears: fear of rejection, fear of getting laughed at, fear of what people will think, fear of being blackballed, fear, right? All of these that we all have. And I say to them, it is not a coincidence. I didn't just write this as you were filling in the chat. These are the fears that all of us have. We all have them at one time or another.
Yeah,
And just knowing that should give you more courage to try to
yeah.
to do what you want to do.
Absolutely. Well, for the last couple of minutes I got you here, I was kind of wanting to ask you a little bit of questions about your time in the industry, acting, all that good stuff. So, is there any major differences between working in acting, voiceover, whatever that might be, between America and Germany? Because you would think that, okay, acting is acting, but is that accurate, or are there big differences? Were there any challenges when you started working over in Germany that you had to unlearn? What is there anything that really sticks out when you think about acting in America versus acting in Germany?
No. No,
Okay,
acting
fair
good
enough.
acting is good acting. There was one thing I had done a movie a few years back in LA, and what I noticed now that I've done a few things in LA since then, or in America, but everybody, like the people on set, will say, "Okay, let's fly in, blah blah blah," and what they mean is like, bring me the reflector, fly in the reflector, you know. And at first I was like, wow, it's like very specific to being on a film set, and
Yeah.
that we don't have that in Germany. They don't say fly it in. um and of course, action in Germany, they say bitte, which means please, right. um but that's, I mean, honestly, you know what? You would like, I'm sure it's the same with musicians. You can always see the roadies, they're all dressed in black, right? Same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Same with all the tech. Yeah, totally the same with all the crew for film sets. And they're all dressed in black, whether you're in LA, whether you're in New York, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in Berlin, everybody's all dressed in black. A lot of the guys have the big, what do you call those tunnels in their ears?
Gauges. Yeah, yeah,
Gauges, whatever,
yeah,
like the tats and all that, right? It's like a scene. It's like this.
yeah,
And so no, really no. But also I think with, planes, like I bring coaches over here, other people bring coaches over here. European actors go to LA, they go to New York. So there's so much of that coming back and forth,
yeah.
um, that no. No, there isn't really
Fair
a
enough.
big, yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. Is there any projects when you think about your time, that really stick out to you? Was there a movie that you did that was one of your favorites? Was there a certain project that you worked on that meant more to you? Or on the opposite end, was there something that was such a complete train wreck you can't forget it to get it out of your mind? When you think about over your time, what are some things or projects that you worked
Yeah,
on that really stick out?
yeah. Well, I can give you one of each. So the one that probably means the most to me was Ojai. That was written and directed by David Austin Thompson, excuse me. And it was a very personal story for him. It was a mixture of dealing with the death of his mom through cancer and kind of at a time when he was growing up. And this was his debut film.
Mm,
And and some sci-fi mixed into it. But I played his mom and he was directing it. So I just like felt, first of all, it's just so unbelievably like moved that it makes me emotional now that he saw, because he obviously loved his mom very much, that he saw whatever that was in me that reminded him of her. But of course, there was also the weight of that, like, because I'm not his mom, right? And I'm not
right.
always going to react the way his mom would have reacted and things like that. But that movie it became very personal, and it was during COVID, as I worked a ton during COVID. So when you work during COVID, the sets are closed, everything is, you're kind of like in quarantine with the crew and the cast, and we became really close, and it was just, yeah, beautiful experience. And the disaster was, oh god, this probably 20 years ago, maybe even more, something like that. Anyway, I mostly did voiceover and presenting, but every once in a while there would be something happening. So around 2000, yeah, I guess that's what it was. Yeah, so a long time ago, 25 years ago, there was a big economic boom, and even like companies that had never invested in films or TV series were all of a sudden investing in things. And so there was a TV series called Ice Planet, and they had brought over one of the Trek directors, Rick Colby. And
Mm.
yeah, and do you know him? Or have you heard of him, Rick
I
Colby?
There is a Star Trek Pez dispenser right behind me.
Oh my god, okay.
I am a
Yeah,
big Trekkie,
sci-fi.
big
Yeah,
Trekkie. So yeah,
yeah,
yep. Hmm.
okay. And so I had been cast in that, in the TV series, and we were shooting the pilot episode. And in the pilot, there was one scene where I didn't have a whole lot to say, but I did have a little bit to say. And I was like, "Ugh," and I really didn't do the work to get that into my body so that
Mm,
when the lights and the camera and all of that, and everybody was watching me, and I had done a scene earlier in the week that was super emotional, and it had gotten around that I could act. So like the stars of the show were like standing there to honor me, to watch me. Man, I fucked that up. I really did.
oh,
Yeah, I just could not remember my lines. I just, like, flew out of my body and head and just could not remember. And I finally did and got it out, but I was so mortified and so destroyed by and angry with myself for letting myself down, for not being
yeah,
prepared like I should have been. It's never happened to me again. It never will happen to me again because it was one of the most mortifying experiences of my life. Um, but yeah, that's
yeah.
that's the good and the bad.
I have a very similar a similar story as well. When I joined the band that I joined was called Menace to Sobriety. And in my area, in the Ohio area, they were very big at one point in time. Um, Regional for underground music or anything. But when I joined my very first, no, it would have been my second show. I had to do a whole bunch of songs that I had never done before live, and I was like, okay. And I waited until the day of because I didn't want to like over prepare. Like I listened to the songs, but I didn't like listen to them super hard. But I was thinking, all right, if I just listen to them periodically and I'll be okay. I don't want to, yeah. Got up there, forgot every freaking line. That I I was so bad. I don't why they didn't fire me immediately. I don't know, but I was so off, I pretended, and I've never told this story publicly before, so I'm like super embarrassed as I'm talking about it, but um I kept pretending that the microphone was going out because I couldn't remember the lines, and I'm in
Oh,
front of a
man.
I'm in
I
there was
feel
like
you. Yeah,
300 people in at this bar watching this band play, and
I feel
just like
you.
this, I
Yeah,
am pretending that the mic is going out because I didn't remember the lyrics.
yeah,
Yeah, so I've got a very similar shit the bed story myself.
yeah.
Oh God,
But
yeah.
hey, I bet you'll never do that again.
Correct. Which is why sometimes I over prepare for these shows because I would
Me
rather know
too.
too much
Yeah, they're
than
not
not
enough. Yeah,
enough. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Well, like I said, I've enjoyed now that we've had this discussion, I'm definitely going to be diving more into your product because again, I didn't want to be too prepared for this because I like having the natural flow of things and finding about the guest that I'm talking to, if it's one of those things where we're coming in cold, not knowing each other, never interacting with each other, I feel like the natural answers are the best. But now that we've had
yeah.
this discussion, I'm definitely going to be diving more into your podcast than I already have. I
Thank you.
find
Yeah,
I find your insights um has a lot of value to it.
mm,
The product that you put out, and again, even though you might not be an actor watching this right now, you can still pull something away from it from wherever. Even if you're just, how to deal with everyday life. I think that you highlight that very well. So,
thank
much
you.
appreciation to you for jumping on here with me today. And I always give the last
Yeah,
couple of minutes to my guests, whatever it is you'd like to plug, social media, how to find you, all that good stuff. The floor is
yeah,
yours.
yeah. Well, if people are interested in possibly putting on an event themselves, I have a free workbook that actually walks you through kind of like from ideation to everything you kind of need to know to take those first few steps. If you're interested in because I am launching this program next year, Passion Project to Pro, where I will literally be walking people from the very first steps of putting together whatever event that they want to do, be it online, a retreat, in person, whatever that looks like for them. To the second to last coaching session is, they go off and launch their event, whatever it may be. And the very last one is we come together and do a debrief, what worked, what didn't work, what are you going to do differently next time? So that by the time they finish the program, they will have hopefully earned back their investment. And if not, in this round, they know how to do it now. They know, how to price things, how to find the experts, how to find the participants, all of those questions that people have around that. So I'm super excited about that. But the workbook will definitely get you on your feet if you're like, hey, I think I got this. This will give you a good guideline for that as well. And you can find that at actboldtraining.com. So Act Bold, I've been giving myself shameless plugs throughout this whole thing. Every time I take a sip of water, right? actboldtraining.com/small p as in passion 2, because my son and I call it P squared because passion project to pro. Get it? And get it. And yeah, my podcast is called Act Bold. I also have my other signature program, which is Get Better Roles. So if you are an actor, a trained actor who is ready to get beyond whatever wall plateau you feel like you're at and start getting the roles that you deserve, hit me up. Let's see if you're a good fit for my program. And other than that, you can catch me right now on Netflix. I'm in the Hallmark Christmas special, A Heidelberg Holiday, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I always answer personally. So if you hit me up in the DMs, it will definitely be me answering. So,
Awesome.
yeah. Oh,
Awesome. And thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jay.